Harry's wife. I'm being held hostage. We now turn to an article by Stephen Cruiser in PJ Media, entitled I'm Being Held Hostage by Harry and Harry's Wife. What has Mr. Cruiser got to write about? Is he perhaps referencing the fact that Harry appears like a hostage, with Harry's wife being his captor? Or is he referencing the fact that he feels like he's a hostage to the two of them? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to dive into the article and learn more. Hey everyone, did you know that kinda sorta Prince Harry has a tell-all book out? As someone who writes and edits a newsletter 5 days a week, it is obviously impossible for me, the author of the article, Mr. Cruiser, writes, to avoid the news. I use a variety of platforms to curate what information flows to me, but it's not a perfect system for filtering out nonsense. There's also the fact that there are no real journalists at the big mainstream media outlets anymore, which means that there is more nonsense than ever. Because of all of the above, it has been impossible to avoid the incessant whining of the Duke and Duchess of Insufferable, Harry and Harry's wife. The reason I don't write a lot about international affairs is that I don't pay much attention to other countries. There's more than enough going on here to keep me occupied. I've always been apathetic about the British royal family, or any royalty for that matter. Yeah, I always admired Queen Elizabeth for hanging around and keeping her dullard son off the throne for as long as she did. Beyond that, I couldn't name most of the Brit royals if I had a gun to my head. I know that Hank and Harry's wife have a kid named Archibald Codswallop Fitzyatsey, or something like that. They might have another kid, but I'm unaware of its pronouns. I understand that there are some Americans who are obsessed with the British royal family, probably because they've never been obsessed with a history book. It never really bothered me before. We all need a hobby. For example, I like playing video games, which I know a lot of people don't understand. It was very much a to each his own approach by me, until Harry decided to move stateside and establish his bona fides as the most whipped husband in the world. I was aware of Harry's wife because I began binge-watching Suits during a low point in my life. My only knowledge of Harry was that he is Charles and Diana's son, and that a lot of conservatives admired him for his military service. What I've learned about them the last 2 weeks is that they are two people of great fortune and privilege who whine about virtually every aspect of their lives. I've learned this all in 2 weeks because every major news outlet that I have to pay attention to has turned into a Harry and Harry's wife gossip outlet. Harry seems to believe that the best way to pump up the book sales is to burn as many bridges as possible. For example, and then there is a tweet from Deadline Hollywood stating, some members of the royal family have got in bed with the devil, says Prince Harry of his family and the British tabloid press in his highly anticipated ITV interview. It wouldn't surprise me, the author writes, to find out that the little Duchess is feeding him lines through an earpiece. If he goes an entire interview without complaining about his family, she probably locks him in the Bad Prince basement without his supper. Now, whilst this author, of course, is joking in those terms, he is, of course, identifying, yet again, like so many other people, that Harry is under the control of his wife. Now, yes, he is his own person, but it has to be understood that he is an individual who was ensnared. And in the course of that ensnarement, he effectively gives up part of or all of his own identity because of the way that he is treated by his wife and the control that she has over him as a consequence of the manipulations and his own addiction to narcissists. Now, some of you may well say, oh, look, HG, we know he's a grown man, he can make his own decisions. It's too much to keep saying this is all down to his wife. But that is demonstrative of not fully understanding the grip that a narcissist can have over a victim. Many people who have not been involved with a narcissist don't truly understand the way that we are able to control people, that we are able to strip them of their own identity, to cause them, through a variety of manipulations, to do what we actually want, often to extremes. And if you want an extreme example, I'm just going to park Prince Harry for a moment and refer you to the kidnapping of Colleen Stan. Colleen Stan, who was born in 1956, is an American woman who was kidnapped and held as a sex slave by Cameron and Janice Hooker in their Red Bluff, California home over 7 years between 1977 and 1984. On May 19th, 1977, Colleen Stan was hitchhiking from her home in Eugene, Oregon, to a friend's home in Northern California, where she was heading to a birthday party. Cameron Hooker kidnapped 20-year-old Stan after picking her up. Stan stated that she was an experienced hitchhiker and had allowed 2 rides to go past before accepting the ride with Hooker. She reportedly felt confident climbing into the blue van because Hooker's wife Janice and their baby were in the car. When they stopped at a gas station along the way, Stan went to use the restroom. A voice told me to run and jump out a window and never look back, she recalled, but she calmed her fears and went back to the car. Hooker then pulled off the highway and put a knife to Stan's throat once they were alone in an isolated area. She was subsequently locked in a wooden headbox that was designed to prevent light, sound and fresh air from entering. After her kidnapping, Stan stated that she was tortured and kept locked in a box 23 hours a day until she was given a contract and forced to sign herself into slavery for life in January 1978. In view from the box, propped up against her purse under the bed, was a photo of Marie Elizabeth Spanhacker, a previous victim whose body was never found. Stan further stated that Cameron led her to believe that she was being watched by a large, powerful organisation called the Company, Triangulation, which would painfully torture her and harm her family if she tried to escape. Stan subsequently became a slave referred to as K and was forced to call Cameron master and was not allowed to talk without permission. Cameron reportedly wanted Stan to be like the female character in the 1954 French erotic novel Story of O. He then started raping her. Following this, the Hooker family moved to a mobile home in Red Bluff with Stan, where she was kept locked in wooden boxes under the couple's waterbed. In 1978, Janice gave birth to a second child on the waterbed above Stan. Stan essentially was kept in this dungeon, and to avoid painful punishments, she tried to comply with the commandments that Cameron gave her, which later led to her being allowed to go out to jog, work in the yard, care for the family's children in the mobile home, and help him build bigger accommodations for more slaves. Even with an open door, neighbours, and a telephone, she made no attempt to escape, as, according to Stan, her fear of the Company kept her from seeking help. Now, there's more about all of this, and you can look it up if you want to see the further details, but the point is this: she was subjected to rape, punishments. She was kept locked in a box in very high temperatures. She had to basically use the toilet inside this box. She had to feed herself with scraps. And yet there was opportunity for her to escape, and she didn't. She basically became an automaton. Now this, of course, is an extreme example, but the point I'm making is that those that might look at Prince Harry and think, well, he can make decisions in all of this. He is, in effect, an automaton as a consequence of the manipulations that he's been subjected to, the exacerbation of the trauma that he's experienced, and his own emotional thinking. It might not be as extreme as the Cameron Stan example that I've just referred you to, but I'm driving the point home that Harry, all of these things, in a way, no sane individual would be going through them. It's like he's taking leave of his senses. and there'll be many people who are listening to me who've been involved with a narcissist will agree that when they look back, clear from the fog, they wonder who they were, who they became. They won't recognise who that individual is. Returning to the article, the union of British noble entitlement and Hollywood shallowness has been even more awful than one might have imagined. It's like throwing two dirty cat litter boxes together. Their royal uselessnesses are running for every camera they can find to talk about wanting to keep their family out of the spotlight. Because we live in an age of stupid leftist emotion, these poor little rich kids are working earnestly to brand themselves as victims. Our never-curious fake journalist class doesn't see any reason to question the mind-numbing absurdity of the premise. Personally, I would love to hear about the horrors of living in luxury and never having to pay for it. The kid's granddad lives in a palace. There's free food and servants everywhere they turn. Why? It's positively Dickensian, isn't it? What would be great is if these two tedious nits would be serious about staying out of the spotlight. They're both obvious attention you-know-whats. I know because I'm one too, I admit it. However, the worst kind of attention seeker is the one who insists that he or she isn't. They will no doubt keep resurfacing like cockroaches in an apartment building. Someone explained to Harry what that is. That can never be gotten rid of. Harry and Harry's wife need to let the American press get back to fluffing for President LOL 81 million. It's unfair that our reporters have to simp for Prince Fussybottom and his American emasculator. And please, European nobility, get back to being good little royals and start marrying your cousins again. All of this, of course, is a piss take, the sensation of being held hostage, but it does enable us to demonstrate that, first of all, it does for many people feel like they're being held hostage to the massive tsunami of information about Harry and Harry's wife that's being pumped out as a consequence of Spare. And furthermore, the way that Harry is indeed a hostage to Harry's wife because of the way that her manipulations have a hold over him and the way that he can't see what's going on. Bizarre as it may seem to many people, he is a captor. He's a captive as a consequence of his own addiction to narcissists. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.